Hello everyone, welcome to Star Psych, and today I want to talk about the tertiary function. The tertiary function is the one function that I think tends to be the most forgotten when we look at an MBTI type. People are less likely to think of this function as being impactful in the psyche, and despite what people tend to think, I actually think it really plays an important role, and today I want to talk about what that role is. Let's get into it. So what's so important about the tertiary function? Why does this function stand out compared to the others? Well, one thing that people tend to forget is that despite the fact that we consider it your third function, the tertiary function is actually closer to consciousness than your auxiliary. And what does that mean? What does it mean by being closer to consciousness? Well, if you're an extroverted type, your tertiary function is also extroverted. Your conscious attitude is extroversion, and therefore your tertiary function is going to be in the conscious attitude. Your auxiliary function is in the unconscious attitude, despite the fact that it typically seems to be more quote-unquote present in the personality. Now, what does this mean for the personality type and how they're going to present themselves? Well, typically it means that despite the fact that it's in the conscious attitude, it is fighting for attention with your dominant function, which is always in the spotlight, usually, or most of the time it's in the spotlight at least. If you are a dominant introverted intuitive, for example, you lead your life through your intuitive perceptions, but introverted, either thinking or feeling, depending on your tertiary function, is going to be kind of fighting for the spotlight occasionally because it is also important. It's also important to you because it's in that conscious attitude. You recognize that it's there, but it's not something that's going to easily take over compared to the dominant function. From a theoretical standpoint, I have my own kind of analogies and perceptions for how I think of the tertiary function and how it typically presents itself. My general idea is that it's more important to you than your auxiliary function. It's going to be something that is closer to importance to you because it's in the dominant attitude, despite the fact that it's something that is typically less shown than your auxiliary function. And how is this going to present itself in day-to-day life for each of the types? Well, I propose, and this is just a proposition, that it's different for the extroverts and the introverts, and that each of these temperaments, each of these attitudes is going to have a different way of presenting the tertiary function. Because extroversion is aimed towards the outer world, it's focused on the outside, my general opinion is that the tertiary function in extroverted types is something that is relatively awkward but important to them. And what I mean by that is often types will see this tertiary function as being something that they want others to recognize in themselves, but they're awkward at it. It just doesn't come off exactly as it should or exactly as it would with somebody who has it in the dominant slot. So say, for example, we compare an ENFJ to an ENTP. Both the ENFJ has dominant extroverted feeling, the ENTP has tertiary extroverted feeling. You'll notice that ENFJs are very confident with their FE. They're usually not like struggling to present it. They're not struggling to engage in that process. It doesn't really come off as awkward. Now, if you look at an ENTP, ENTPs usually have relatively developed extroverted feeling. It's not something that's terrible. It's not repressed like you would see in the INTP, but it does come off just a little awkward at times where it's like, what are they doing? It feels like they're trying too hard with this function. And I think that's what we really see with the extroverted types in reference to the tertiary function, is this desire to show it, a desire for it to be present in their personality, but it's just awkward and doesn't come off 100% right. The introverted types have a very similar relationship with their tertiary function. It just happens to be introverted. And what does this mean for the introverted types? Well, it means that just like the extroverted type, they want this function to be a present part of their personality. It's something that's extremely important to them. I want this to be part of me. I want it to be present. But they're usually far less likely or willing to show it to the world. It's more so something that has to be present within themselves as an aspect of my personality. This is who I am. I don't need others to recognize this in me as long as I'm able to recognize it in myself. And it can even come off as the main description that I use for this function for the introverted types is shy. This is going to be the shy function for most introverted types, or something that may be even a slight pressure point where if you push on it, they're going to react more sharply than you might have imagined because it's something that's really important to them, but they're not exactly sure how to healthily use this function especially if they're in their younger years, under the age of 30 or 40. I find that with people over the age of 40, maybe they've kind of evened out a little bit and they have a better relationship with the tertiary function and how to properly use it. But for the most part, introverted types tend to hold their tertiary function very dear to them. They're just not very great at understanding how to properly use it. I know for myself as an INTJ, I would say that my FI is extremely important to me, but it's something that I don't want other people to see. It's not like, oh, I want you to recognize my FI. I just need it to be present in my personality for my sake, not for anyone else's sake. I don't need other people to recognize it. It's just for me. And I don't at times I don't want other people to see it. I want it to be something that's only recognizable within me, because I want people to recognize me, I would say even more for like the TE aspect. I like the idea of looking professional and all that, but I also want the FI to be present in the authentic nature of my communication style, essentially. So essentially, the introverted types hold that tertiary function very dearly. It's just not something that they're going to want the world to see around them until they get to a point, maybe later in life, where they recognize that it's something that they can develop and grow a better relationship with. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed my descriptions of how I think the tertiary function tends to play out. Let me know down in the description box below, what do you think of the tertiary function? Do you think that it also plays a more important role in the psyche compared to the auxiliary function as I propose in this video? Or do you think that's just nonsense? Let me know. I would love to hear your opinion. This, again, is just me kind of proposing my perceptions, thoughts, and opinions on how I think that these functions tend to play out. Other than that, I would like to remind people that I do have personality typing sessions available at my website, asuraspsych.com, if you're interested in working with me to find out what your personality type is and what that means for you. This has been Asura from Asura Psych. Have a good one.